learners, welcome back to the course on social processes and behavioral issues. And today we are in session 2 of unit 12 of this course. So we basically continue from session 1 of unit 12, where we had discussed or we had begun our discussions on motivation. And we continue with the same today with a specific thrust on the content theories, their practical implications, the differing perspectives on motivations, and the beginnings of the next category of theories called popularly as the process theories. So moving ahead, we go with the content theories and we start today with McClelland's theory of needs. Once again, to bring you back or rather to reiterate to the first session of unit 12, content theories are a group of theories which talk of motivation in terms of human needs. So there are certain fundamental needs in human beings, and if we are able to take care of these needs, then we motivate people and make them committed to their jobs. So McClelland is very, very famous for his theorization on the need for achievement, and his index, which is also called as the N-arch, is a very popularly mentioned foundation in motivation. So when you look at McClelland, you basically talk of three needs. The first is the need for achievement, the second is the need for power, and the third is the need for affiliation. So once again, moving ahead, what is the need for achievement? Need for achievement is a manifest, easily perceived need that concerns individual issues of excellence, competition, challenging goals, persistence, and overcoming difficulties. What is the need for power? Need for power is a manifest, easily perceived need, meaning easily seen need, that concerns an individual's need to make an impact on others, influence others, change people or events, and make a difference in life. Then comes the last, which is the need for affiliation. It's a manifest, once again, easily perceived need that concerns an individual's need to establish and maintain warm, close, intimate relationships with other people. So basically, if I were to sum up the three needs, the first, which is the need for achievement, looks at the individual need for challenge. Do I thrive on challenge? So what is my need for challenge? Then comes the need for power, which talks or describes the individual's need to influence, to make a change. Then the last is the need for affiliation, which is very, very fundamental, which has also been talked about in other theories like those of Maslow and Alderfer, which basically talks about belongingness needs, or the need for bonding, or the need to develop meaningful relationships with other people. Now, because McClelland is famous for his theories on the need for achievement, it is worthwhile to discuss certain pointers or characteristics of high achievers in organizations. The first of these characteristics is very important because it says that achievers set goals which are moderately difficult and yet achievable. That means achievers are very conscious about the goals that they set. They are not interested in setting nearly impossible goals to achieve. So they like difficulties, but those difficulties should be within a restrained boundary which enable them to achieve these goals in the near future. Now, the next need that you figure out in achievers is their need to receive feedback on their progress towards these goals. Achievers are very feedback oriented and they like to receive periodic feedback on the kind of achievement that they are making towards the goals that they set. Then the last of these characteristics is talking about the fact that these people have an internal locus of control, or achievers have an internal locus of control, and therefore they are people who do not like the presence of external entities or external events or people who interfere with their progress towards the goal. So these are the three important characteristics of people who we consider as high achievers. Now, when we look at their goal setting processes, it's very interesting because we understand that they set difficult goals, but not nearly unachievable goals. The second, which talks about their need for feedback, also resonates with what we find in Gen Y in organizations today. Generation Y, or the latest generation to join the workforce thrives on feedback. They're also called as the feedback generation. They expect feedback on everything that they do within an organization. And the third is that these people have an internal locus. Everything happens within. Okay. So that's the reason why they do not want people or external events to interfere with their progress towards the goals. Now, moving ahead, we come to another fundamental content theory of motivation propounded by Herzberg. Herzberg's theory is also called as the two-factor theory of motivation. Now, the two-factor theory of motivation has had tremendous impact in different areas of human resource management. So, what are these two factors? The first of them is called as a motivational factor or a work condition related to satisfaction of the need for psychological growth. Now, the next is called as the hygiene factor. What is this? This is a work condition related to dissatisfaction caused by discomfort or pain. Now, it's very interesting to note his observations on hygiene factors. Now, hygiene factors do not necessarily motivate individuals, but the absence of these factors may cause discomfort or pain. So, they are basically the basics that should be there for a person to do his or her own work with commitment and motivation. So now let's take some examples of what motivation and hygiene factors can look like. Now, motivation factors are the work itself, the recognition that an individual gets, advancement, responsibility. These factors are intrinsic to the job. That means there are certain characteristics in the job that motivate an individual, and they are also internal to the individual capabilities and abilities. Now, if we look at motivational factors, they can be extrinsic, external, as in recognition. Recognition can be financial, recognition can also be non financial. There can be the possibility of advancement or promotion in the job, but motivational factors are also internal because they depend on the characteristics of the individual and the characteristics of the job. Now, when we come to hygiene factors, these are largely external. So let's take some examples. Company policy and administration, technical supervision, salary, working conditions, interpersonal relations, and if you look at all of them, they are mostly external to the individual and very often external to the job. Now, moving ahead, all of the content theories have influenced motivational thought for a long period of time. So, what are the managerial implications of these theories? The first is the need to promote a healthy workforce. So, physical and mental well being of employees by satisfying their physiological needs is of importance. Physiological needs are deficiency needs, but they need to be taken care of by organizations so that individuals think of higher order needs. Now, for example, Hershey Foods Corporation gives insurance rebates to their employees for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Now, this is something that is done by many other organizations as well. Now, the next implication comes in the provision of financial security. Financial security is a part of safety needs and it's related to job security, particularly in troubled times and layoffs. The times that we are in right now, in the midst of a global pandemic, which has hit various industries and has almost wiped out certain industries, this need is very important. That means people should feel secure within their jobs, to feel motivated to do their job. Now, AT&T provides outplacement services to employees it lays off. To give an example, AT&T, even while laying off its employees, helps them to receive a placement outside its own organization. Now, the third is provision for opportunities to socialize. The belongingness need, the need to build relationships is a very, very fundamental need in human beings, and organizations also must capitalize on their work processes to take care of this need through the concept of family dinners, picnics, retreats, etc. The last is recognizing employee accomplishments. Recognition, as I have told before, can be financial in the form of rewards, bonuses, and incentives, but it can also be non-financial in the form of time off, in terms of recognition, in terms of sabbaticals. So, whatever the recognition process is, it should be transparent and it should be readily available for employees to feel satisfied, to feel motivated within their jobs. Now, Motivation, as learners would understand, is one of the most theorized areas of OB, and that's the reason why it's populated with differing perspectives. So it is important for us to discuss some of the more important differing perspectives that we find within the boundaries of motivational theories. Now, the first of these perspectives is by Skinner. Skinner's impact on the field of behavioral psychology is unparalleled. So he's made maximum impact with his theories on behavioral modification through a very, very fundamental concept called as reinforcement. So Skinner believes that behavior can be modified by the use of reinforcement tools. Now, reinforcement can be positive in nature through the advent of rewards. If you give rewards, you are positively reinforcing an individual to make a behavioral modification. But reinforcements can also be negative. That means, in the absence of a positive reinforcement, the reinforcement becomes negative. But herein, it is very important to understand the difference between negative reinforcement and punishment. Now, for example, if I tell a student that if you come to my class 5 minutes late, then I shall mark you absent. Now, this is an example of a negative reinforcement. But when does punishment happen? Punishment happens when I actually mark the student as absent for coming 5 minutes late into my class. So, according to Skinner, reinforcement can be positive, it can be negative, it can also take the shape of punishment, and there can be something called as extinction. So, all of these have the power to collectively influence or collectively impact something called as behavioral modification. Then comes Likert employee-centered approach. Traditionally, the field of management and organizations have focused on capital resources more than human resources. So it's only in the later part of the 20th century and in the 21st centuries that people have realized the importance of human resources in their organization. So Likert maintains that if the bosses or the supervisors are employee-centered rather than job-centered, they will be able to motivate their employees or subordinates. Now, the last of these differing perspectives is by Porter and Lawler. Porter and Lawler talk about two characteristics which help motivate a person. The first is the expected utility of the reward. And this point will later on be discussed in greater detail in the process theories of motivation, but this is very important. Why? Because it says that reward by itself is not going to motivate a person. The utility that a person perceives within that reward is what will motivate the person to make an effort in the job. And it will also determine the quantum of effort that a person will put into a job. Now, the second is role expectations. Now, role expectations are what people make of their jobs. So, for example, if I have a certain kind of role expectation from my job, then I would like to enrich my job by taking additional assignments, or I would like to stay within the boundaries of what I perceive to be my role within a job. So, these are some of the important ideas by Porter and Lawler, which think of motivating individuals within a job. Now, moving ahead, we will go into something called as the process theories. Process theories are equally important as the content theories of motivation because they have looked at the processes that determine the complex construct of motivation. So, what are the important process theories that we will be discussing in Unit 12? The first is the goal setting theory. The second is the equity theory, and the third is the expectancy theory. So today we focus on the first, which is the goal setting theory. Now, goal setting theory talks about motivating people through setting motivational or challenging goals. So what is this? Now, goal setting is the process of determining specific levels of performance for workers to attain. And this entire process of achievement of setting of goals and achievement of goals is hinging on one concept called as the self-efficacy. Now, self-efficacy was an offshoot of Bandura's theory. Now, what does it mean? It means one's own belief in one's own capacity to perform a particular task. Goal setting theory is a theory according to which a goal acts as a motivator because it causes people to compare their present capacity to perform with that that is required to succeed at the goal. So what is my present ability and what do I require to perform the goals? What is the gap between the two? Is there a gap? And if there is a gap, how do I bridge that gap? Now, the degree to which people accept and strive to attain goals is called as goal commitment. So if I'm more committed towards a particular goal, then I'm more motivated in my job or in my task in an organization. Now, there are some guidelines about setting motivational goals. We must realize that all goals are not motivational goals. So what can be the reasons why people may not be able to set motivational goals? So characteristics of motivational goals are: the first is assign specific goals. Goals should not be vague. Goals should not be ambiguous. They should be specific and they should have a specific intent. So people tend to find specific goals challenging and they are motivated to try and perform them. And this was what was found in the classic study at the Oklahoma lumber camp, whereby people said that vague goals are not going to determine what people would do in their tasks. So you give them a particular goal, you maintain what that goal is, and then people would be motivated to perform that goal because they understand what needs to be done. Now, the second is what was mentioned earlier: assign difficult but acceptable performance goal. A goal must be specific and difficult to raise performance. Now, what is the meaning of difficulty here? Difficulty means that a person should find it challenging, but at the same time, it should not be insurmountable that a person will not at all understand how to reach that goal. So both categories of goals, goals which are too easy, that means you don't really have to put effort to achieve the goal, or goals which are too difficult. That means even if you put the maximum possible effort that you can put, there is a huge possibility or probability that you may not achieve this goal. So both categories, both ends of the spectrum do not motivate individuals. So goals, the difficulty level of goal should be carefully decided in order to maintain uh, its motivational factor. So for example, while as a teacher, while I'm setting a question paper, I need to be sure that I'm not setting questions which are very easy. That means students do not have to put any effort in answering the question, or at the same time, I should be very careful about setting questions which are not too difficult, that even with best possible effort, students will not be able to answer those questions, because both of those category of questions will be extremely demotivating for students. Now, an example here is Bell Canada's telephone operators are required to handle calls within 23 seconds, and FedEx's customer service agents are expected to answer customer query within 140 seconds. So very specific, and the level of difficulty is carefully determined. And the last is you need to provide feedback regarding goal achievement. So goals are not only to be achieved, but supervisors, team members, managers need to provide feedback to employees on the extent of goal achievement and what could have been done to improve the possibilities of goal achievement. So these are the three major characteristics of motivational goals, where we are talking of the specifics, where we are talking of the assignment of difficult goals, and where we are talking about the feedback regarding goal attainment. So that, dear learners, is all for today. Thank you.